Thank you for tuning in to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast, which conversations about growing tech startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, I am joined by Vinny Lawrenson-Woods, VP of Product Engineering at Prezzee. Prezzee is a global digital gifting platform that creates human connections through remarkable gifting moments. They offer leading digital gift solutions for consumers, businesses, and 800 and more brand partners across the world. We'll get into what that really means to their different customer bases. But first, welcome, Vinny. It is great to have you on. I'm really excited to be talking with you. Your career has taken you through many different places. But if we start with maybe early on, a little bit about who you are and where you started.
Cool. Thanks for the invite, Rosie. I'm really glad to be on. So a little bit about myself. I'm probably here from the accent. I'm from Liverpool in the UK. That's where I'm originally from. My background, I guess, a self-taught engineer. I guess my academic options were limited when I first got into tech, and I wasn't really a gamer. I was preferred to try and build them. So that was my early introduction into tech. And luckily enough, it got me into a career. So my first role was at a software house, kind of doing anything that needed to be done, from writing code to soldering cables, whatever they needed to happen. So that was a fantastic introduction for me into the tech world. But I guess that took me from there to the US. I worked in New Hampshire for a while, kind of in import-export kind of industry, international trade. Came back to the UK, was in London for a little while, and then back up to Liverpool. And I guess that's where my career changed somewhat. So my wife and I were working on things outside of the day job, if you like, and we kind of set up a bit of an arts charity or organization, and it got really popular. It got to a point where I needed to make a decision. Do we kind of focus on it or kind of keep it at a particular level? So I guess I put down the tech tools and went into the arts engagement world, which was a completely different space altogether. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting time of my career. And obviously, we're talking here about tech, so I'll definitely come back into tech, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that more in a minute. But
yeah, I mean, from working where you were in the tech world to the arts world, they're two probably. I mean, now they're getting a little bit closer than they have been before, but have previously been very, very worlds apart. What made you start the arts charity?
It was basically, I haven't really got an arts background, but kind of like going to theatre or gigs or to galleries, and I always found them a little bit intimidating. It's that kind of didn't really grow up in that space. So it was really that was the thing that was driving that. We were really aware of a lot of great things happening, but it was not everybody was involved. So we kind of just started to explore how we could introduce more people into this world, and made it accessing it a lot easier. So we kind of come up with I guess it was Groupon before Groupon. It was like we come up where we'd speak to venues and things and say, oh, we want to do something special here, either be cheap tickets, or we want to talk to the cast, or we want to talk to the band. But they were like, oh, cool. No, this is our group booking approach. We go, no, we want a discount, but we don't know how many people are going to attend. But you'll get access to our kind of our membership list, if you like. Yeah. And really kicked off. So we ended up like the largest arts kind of network in Liverpool, really. Yeah.
And do you know if it's still going now, or it might have shifted since you left it?
No. Yeah, no. We actually closed it before we moved to Australia. A few people wanted to take it on, but it was really a kind of. It was a values thing. I think the way people wanted to move it forward was not how we intended it. They wanted to put a membership fee around it and all that kind of stuff, and it was
Yeah.
not really what we wanted to do. So we kind of gracefully closed it down before we,
Oh,
before we left.
and I mean, Liverpool to Australia, that's big distance. Must have been a
Yeah, yeah.
strong pull. What was the driver behind the move?
It was my wife, really. Like I said, when we kind of done our kind of both of us this career change into the arts world, it kind of, as you can imagine, it's not the most lucrative
Mm.
way to kind of earn a living. So we were doing different things on the side. I was working at the local unis as a mentor. I was writing. I was doing a few other things. And Luann, my wife, she decided to go and do a degree. And at the end of that, she wanted to do a master's. And then the actual master's she wanted to do, there was a great one in Sydney Uni. So it was kind of like, why not? So, and my wife had lived in Australia before, like on a working holiday a few years before, but I hadn't visited before, so um, I guess my first visit was when we moved here. So
Wow. And not
yeah,
looked
so
back? You don't
not look.
not missing rainy Liverpool?
No, it's pretty rainy here these days, but no, definitely not missing out on it. No. So it's been amazing since we've been here, but it was also very scary as well, a bit challenging. I've been out of tech for nearly 7 years. Obviously, yeah, out of tech for a year and the world changes. So 7 years was unrecognizable. So I wanted to get back into tech, and but then getting in was becoming a bit of a challenge. Every time I'd
Mm.
spoke to, say, a recruitment agency or organized, they were like, "Oh, look at my CV and say, oh, well, when you get to Sydney, we'll have a chat and we'll see how it is." And it's like we had limited savings, so we couldn't really afford to just get here and hope for the best. So luckily enough, through a friend, I was offered a role in Sydney in technology, but it was as a tester, an automation tester, which I'd never done before. But I thought,
Mm.
I'll give it a go, foot in the door, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it just kind of went on from there. So it was a consultancy, and my first client was Vodafone. And I probably worked there for about 6 months, and there was software engineering roles going. So I applied for one of them, got the engineering role, moved to a tech lead role, and then there was an engineering manager role. Applied for that and got that. Stayed. I was there for about 3 years, and then I moved on to Qantas as an engineering manager, and then moved on to like a senior manager looking after the digital apps at Qantas,
Mm.
Qantas.com and the mobile apps. Um, and then I was there till COVID. And then with COVID, along with 20,000 other people, I was stood down.
Mm.
And then I was lucky enough to go to Atlassian for a while before I decided what I wanted to do next. And I've ended up at Prezzee, which is, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things in there I want to unpick because I think for
Yeah,
people listening, for a couple of different avenues, what you just said there is really interesting. 7 year gap in any industry is tough, but in tech is probably the hardest
yeah.
uphill battle to face. Understandably, the new technology was probably the biggest barrier. When you did get into that role, and maybe more when you were in the software position, what was it like?
It was quite daunting, because I think when I've learned new tools and languages, there was always that kind of expectation that I was either a junior developer or the company had made a technology change, and there was an expectation there was kind of a bit of a learning curve.
Mm.
But I guess I was trying to leverage my experience, but also I knew I was diving into new technologies. So I'd say there was a lot of hours outside of work trying to get myself up to
Mm.
speed. Um, it was just the paradigm was so different. I think I wasn't necessarily a web developer either when I'd done before. So it's just, yeah, a lot different. So it
Mm.
was, I think that first couple of months or whatever, I was kind of sweating.
Yeah.
And I was like, kind of, I'm going to be found out at any minute. But
Yeah.
then you realize, a lot of technology, it's you're solving the same problems, and And
Yeah.
if you kind of treat the languages and tools and technologies as they are tools, I think that's when it comes, okay, I can do this, I kind of know what I'm doing. It's just how you apply them.
Yeah. I think what was something that was clear from what you said is previously being in a leadership position, going away for 7 years, coming back to it, you barely fit quick progression back into some form of people leadership role, and then it was up from there. Having had to go through that like ground zero back up again, do you think that's changed at all the way you look at leadership now compared to back then?
I guess it does. I guess, because it's funny, you have lots of conversations and what people think leadership is, and there's a whole thing like a leader should be on the tools, to kind of in the or the it's very very different approaches and what people believe leadership is, and I think what I've probably recognized more than anything yet, the technology stuff is super important. So I've got to have conversations with people. I've got to be a voice in the room that's respected, and people know I can ask a valid question. But ultimately, I think in the leadership role, you have to let go anyway. You're not there to solve problems, solve the technical problems. That's why you hire the right people to do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of you've actually got to drop the ego, and you've got to step aside and let someone else follow where they think they need to go. Because the reality is, because I'm not doing it every day now, I'm not the right person to do it.
Yeah.
And you can't do both.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I've recognized, probably more so than any, often with leadership roles, it's seen as I guess, a growth path for engineers. But I'd argue strongly against that. I think you should really look at it as a job change. It's a different set of skills and priorities. Not to say engineers can't do it, because obviously I've done it, but I think it's not just the natural direction someone has to go or should go.
And I think that's true of any sector. Being a leader, you have to put that ego aside, and that was what makes hiring the team that you are leading so much more important, because you are having to trust your next like line of people, and listening and not thinking, I'm just going to check and see if I can solve it myself, and would I do it differently. It makes those next hires you make so important. I want to talk a little bit about Prezzee, because I think it will lead nicely into where we go next. But
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. So look, so when I left Atlassian, because I did a contract over COVID, I went back to Qantas for a very short amount of time before I moved on. And I did move to another startup, but it was pretty brief. It was about 3 months. I joined and realized it wasn't for me. So that's one of we're quite lucky in tech that we do have these options often, that there's the demand around, and then I guess it's just timing. But it's actually a guy I used to work with at Vodafone. He was the head of digital at Vodafone. He actually reached out to me. He knew I'd just moved companies, but he reached out. He was just looking for some, advice, really, just on some team related type things. And so we caught up for a beer and stuff, and then obviously he didn't realize what was going on with me. I was kind of having second thoughts, but I'd just gone. So, and then it just, at that time, they were looking for a head of engineering, and it was like, oh, here's an opportunity. So we had a few conversations and tried to figure out if this was the right move, the right thing to do. Obviously, I had to go through the process like everyone, but it was just good to know I was going to a company with somebody I trusted and somebody I knew I could work well with. So that was a big pull to go to Prezzee. I've worked in So I'm not too I'm not like a person who can only work in enterprises or only work in startups. I think to me what drives me is what we're trying to achieve. And Aaron, who's the CTO, he really hooked me because he was like, once he started to talk about the ambitions and what they were trying to do, it was like, oh, this sounds pretty exciting. This looks like it's something I could definitely get into. And yeah, especially the growth ambitions, the kind of where they come from, where they see they're going, and you know, it's kind of all come to fruition really. So it's been a pretty amazing ride. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about some of those points, some of the things that were the pull factors? Like what is the value add of Prezzee? Why did they start the company?
Yeah, so Prezzee was started by a couple of founders, Claire and Matt, and they actually I believe it was Claire who she was in a store, forgot a gift card, lots of not sure what gift cards have got what balances are, and come up with the idea of actually if you just had like an online portal where you could store your gift cards, you know what your balances is, you don't lose them, they're there when you need them. And that was really the initial drive for the company. And then when I joined the company, it was you see, so this would have been, I think it was around 2016 kicked off. So I was late to the game, if you like, in that way. But I think a lot of the growth, like the major kind of uplift in the growth that happened like maybe the year before. So they built a good product. They've got a lot of good customers, and now they were on this real big trajectory, like internationally. And I think it sounds really simple. We just do gift cards, but actually, once we started to understand, and you know, the amount of partners you're working with, and then the USP of Prezzee itself is it's serves B2C. So you know, customers like you and I, and we can go and buy. Obviously, there's about 800 brands now globally, and also B2B, like employee incentive programs. So, you know, companies who want to give gifts to their employees, it's really simple. You know, you can brand it in the company's branding. Everything's immediate. Also, we have a smart card, which is effectively means you get a gift card for a value, and you can swap that card to any other gift card or multiple gift cards. And I think that's one of the USPs. So you kind of go, okay, someone's giving me $100 for a birthday. You can personalize it, videos, you know, messages, gifts, whatever, these different things. Have a really lovely open experience. It's like opening a gift digitally. But ultimately, you kind of go, okay, I've got $100 and I want to be able to, I might put $20 on this supermarket or $20 on this sports shop, and you can spend it how you like. And I think that's been a big driver. And then COVID as well kind of really drove that digital demand as well. So.
Where are Prezzee now? Like what's the size of the company? I'm interested to know how much of the business is B2B and how much of it is B2C.
Okay. So the company is around 300 people now. When I joined, it was just shy of 80. This was around 18 months ago, so it's been pretty big growth. Then when I joined, my team was around 25. We've actually got two new starters next week. That'll break 80 for product engineering. So it's, you know, it's more than tripled in size. So it's been a big push. So sorry, can you just repeat the question?
The second question was from a B2B and a B2C perspective. I know you all have started B2C, but how I think that the B2B element's really interesting, and I can see why a lot of businesses get on board with that. I know in our business, the gift cards is a really great way to incentivize people because you get all of that money rather than being taxed on it. So how much of the business is split B2B and B2C?
Yeah, I'd say the amount of yeah, I don't know what the actual percentages are, but I think just with volumes, I think we have actually three parts of the business, which is our strategic partners, which are like API customers. Probably in volume, they're probably the highest. So where our gift cards may be sold on other storefronts. B2B comes after that, definitely, because obviously when big organizations will be buying gift cards in the tens of thousands. And I guess B2C is really, I guess the face of the company, like kind of, and I think the business side and the API customers definitely drive people to the B2C space. So, it's a small company. We're not, I'd say, a completely household name yet. But a lot of people get to know us through their employee incentives or other directions as well. So it's just been amazing to watch. The growth has just been phenomenal.
Well, tripling in size is pretty impressive, especially in 18 months in any normal circumstance, let alone the last 18 months that we've had. That is really impressive. What now? What's the next 6-12 months like?
I'd say international is definitely where we're driving now. We had a new CEO joined in early last year. He's ex Mastercard, and he's an Aussie, but he actually lives in London. So and now we've actually brought on a lot of amazing people on the exec level as well. So there's that real global ambition now. And the structure of the company is set up very much in that global sense, in readiness, if you like. So even though Australia has been historically the biggest market, once the US and UK hit, then it's going to be a different story.
Yeah, I imagine you're going to start to grow out team, kind of repeat what you did in Australia in the other areas where you see a big market.
Yeah, exactly. So we've already got offices now in San Francisco, New York, and London, and we're just building them out, and so that's the exciting piece. And I guess from a technology point as well, scale is super important. So that's an amazing challenge for the engineers, is to actually to keep up with that growth.
So when you look at the last 18 months, tripling in size is no small feat. We'll have had its challenges. We'll have had its fun moments. Given that you've probably got more growth on the horizon, and this won't be the last time you'll grow a team, when you look back on that, what do you think went well?
I think the actual, it's a tough market, tech market, and I think we've just on a very simple place. We just done well to get great people. We're definitely punching above our weight in terms of being up against the big tech brands in Sydney, but we've actually built an amazing team, and not just amazing team in terms of skills. I think just an amazing group of people. One thing I was really happy about, and one of the driver again for joining Prezzee, was the culture. It was obvious as a place where people collaborate well. It was a very friendly place. It was people, there was just that sense of real belonging in the place, and they have a set of values, and it's talked about and lived every day. So the big challenge was, as we grow this quickly, how do we keep that culture and the values? So I'm really happy that we managed to do that. We've also, which again, really happy about, 25% of my team are female. So that's, I'm really, really struck by that. So that's been amazing. Yeah, I think it's an extremely diverse team, and I think that drives that real good culture as well.
What did you do? Some of it will have been subconsciously, and because you're all a shared group of people, probably with very similar values. But for the values of the business that you bought into, and everybody else on the team, what did you proactively do to keep that as you scaled? Because it is harder as the team gets bigger. What did you put in place?
I think one thing I recognised when I first joined Prezzee, we were very much in that startup mode. It was I think, stepping into that scale up. So it was on that maturity drive. So there was some things where I thought, okay, this needs an area to look at, and one was the recruitment, I'd say. So recruitment and professional development, and so it was, at the time the recruitment happened very much like we had one person who was our talent team, so they had a lot on their shoulders, and then it was very much hiring for skills. So it was like, we need this particular language or this tool. It was very front end, back end, mobile, etc. divided. There was very targeted, skills based. I think it was just unclear what the growth path was for people. That said, the team was pretty small, so it was not unusual that we were at that point. But I thought it was the right time to bring that in. So when you actually then come up with a strategy, a people strategy, it allows you to sit down and think about what you're looking for the team. And on the kind of more tech side, we were all tech agnostic, so we were just looking for good engineers rather than a particular tool or technology. We were going for more of a full stack mindset, just to help us scale and to be flexible. And often I find that mindset of being open to new tools and technologies, it kind of ties into the value thing as well. It kind of, it's someone who's a bit more open, a bit more flexible. And then ultimately it was like, what sort of person are we looking for? And we split it into attributes, really. It was attitude and aptitude. So it was, what attitude are we looking for? So we're looking for curiosity, we're looking for empathy, we're looking for a level of care. And then on the aptitude, it was, assuming we pick up a new tool or technology, do that, have the aptitude to pick it up as well. And I think that really helped drive the thinking about, okay, this is, I'd say we probably lean more people first than technology first.
I think it's really interesting you say that, because I think more people, and I don't know if it's a shift a little bit post-COVID as well, because I think that made everybody shake up a little bit and realize we can't keep doing things the way we've been doing it, because it's just not sustainable. But especially in tech recruitment, I've had to shift the way I look at finding new talent. And I'm not talking about my team, I'm talking about when we're finding engineers for companies, because the tech is almost like a tick box now. It's not just, and especially when we only work with startups, they're looking for those, really intuitive people who are fascinated by what they're doing, and they'll go out of their way to try and find the solution. And whether they can use the language on day one or not is almost a tick box. And we can't, as recruiters who have never been software engineers, assess whether they have great Python skills or not. We can ask them all the questions we want, but that only goes so far. So I thought, sending a profile of somebody who we've vetted with a little bit of notes about them, that's kind of not good enough anymore, because it just says a little bit more than what's on the paper. So we tried to come up with something that speaks very much to what you just said about the attitude and the character of a person. So we now send with profiles, we send a video, it's 5-6 minutes, work with the client on what questions would draw out those things from somebody, and we send that over, and that tends to give us a much better success rate. And I feel like I'm actually adding value to the interview process than where I was before, because you're right, the best people it's about who they are. It's less, a really good engineer can learn a new technology fairly quickly. And I think more people will latch onto this idea that you've just mentioned there. And that's probably why you could triple in size so quickly, because you went after the right type of people. I imagine your turnover is pretty good. Would you do anything differently?
It's a funny one, reflect on that sort of thing. And I think, there's always something you prioritize over something else. In general, I'd probably say not a lot, because I think I'm really proud of the team that we've got right now. It's probably, if anything, I'd say share the load earlier, because when I first started, I was pretty much doing all the interviews, and it's actually, I probably would have, in hindsight, I would have shifted that load. At the moment, I don't get involved in many interviews now, and the team have taken it up, and we want to have a broad, like a group of people who could interview. So I guess in hindsight, I probably would have done that quicker. So it wasn't always kind of waiting on me. So yeah, that's probably it though, yeah.
And funnily enough, that's very similar to what you said about learning curves when you went back to the start and came back up again. That it's about passing the load and not feeling like you need to do it yourself. But that is hard, because you don't hire your team to be great interviewers. And interviewing isn't easy. It can feel like it sometimes, but it's definitely not. But
I'll say I'll say one thing I have learned though, and I think it's really important, by getting your engineers involved in it, and if they understand the strategy, they're bought into it, they know what they're looking for. Also, they're actually selling the role to the next person. If someone comes into an interview like me, they're a manager, whatever, but if they're talking to their peers and they're talking to somebody they can respect in terms of the technology discussions, and this person who's interviewing is talking about all the great things Prezzee is doing, I think it's a massive pull to why someone would join. So I think there's a lot of value in that. Absolutely.
I think it's you'd be surprised how many companies, when people are interviewing, they don't get to meet people on there who would be at their level. It's such a good tool. For you then, now you've tripled. You're probably at a steady rate for a while. I know you've got two new people joining, but what now? How do you adjust to the next phase?
I think we've been running so hot for a while. We're trying to obviously grow the team, but also scale the technology as well as grow into new regions. So I think it would be nice to kind of actually get our heads down, and the technology is something I'm really passionate about, making sure we're with this world-class kind of platform that's going to support that, hopefully infinite growth. But it's that, and it takes time to do that. Prezzee's historically like a monolith product, but we've done some amazing things even over the last 18 months, moving to microservices and micro front ends. We've changed technologies, we've changed languages. So in spite of everything else, we've still managed to do a lot of great technical things. But it'd be nice now to actually go, what gets us to that 100x, 1000x, 10,000x in terms of, and I think the team are really keen to do that. And also there's a lot of, obviously we've talked a little bit about the gift cards, and that was what was the driver for Prezzee. But actually we've shifted to more of a, we don't even talk about gift cards actually in the how Prezzee described now. So it's about digital gifting. And there are some things which are happening, unfortunately I can't talk about at the moment, but there's a definite diversification, I guess, into that digital gifting space, which is really interesting too.
Good. Hopefully we hear about that soon. One of the things that before we decided to do this podcast, we had a really good chat. One of the things that came up in that was something you talked about, where you want the team to mature and grow now together, not necessarily in size, as you move into the next phase. I think this is a really interesting piece, and it's surprisingly few people talk about this in this way. So I want just explain that in a bit more detail. What do you mean by maturing the team?
I think, obviously, I'm generalizing, but I think there's a general thought that, okay, you need to grow your teams. We need 10 more people, 100 more people, and they land, and all of a sudden you get 100-fold, in terms of capacity or these different things. I think what you got to recognize about what you got to recognize about teams is they're a group of individuals. They're human beings, and it's like you're in a squad. You're putting 10 people together, and what happens? It takes time for them to get to know each other. They've got the complexities of the systems they're dealing with. There's stakeholders. There's their peers. There's relationships are being built, and you've got to recognize that how somebody is in the first 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months is not going to be what they're like in 4 or 5 months. And there needs a little bit of patience to actually get the best outcomes, and is actually to trust the team to find their feet and to understand how they work with each other. There's, especially when you're in quick growth, I'm not saying Prezzee naturally, but in various places I've been to, there's this natural inclination from the outside to say, oh, they're not achieving fast enough, and said, well, they started, like 3 weeks ago or whatever, and people start talking about change now. Oh no, we need to pull this person from that team and build it up, and then you actually go, well, all you're doing is resetting the team. You're actually starting back. So it's that real recognition that it takes time, and this is again, which is another challenge with the tech industry, and we're really looking at attrition is really low. But when people are moving on all the time, to get that stability in teams is really hard. So you may never get to that point where they're actually humming and they understand each other, and they're kind of this tight little unit that you can just leave alone and they'll go and do amazing things. But I think it's just recognizing people are human, and it takes time for them relationships and things to build, as well as understanding the platforms they're working on.
Yeah, and I guess that is the big thing about the tech industry, isn't it? It's why so many recruitment businesses focus on it, because it's such high demand. There's such low unemployment rates that people do move, and keeping people in the team is often as hard as finding them.
Yeah.
Have you got something moving forward into this next period of, right, we've got a really good bunch of people here, how do we keep hold of them?
Yeah, look, I think that's been a thought from day one. The people and happiness team are, it's something I've got a business partner who's amazing. We talk about this, or we talk about it as a company all the time, in that employee value proposition. What are we bringing to kind of engage and keep the team? And it's so multi-layered. It's like, obviously salaries is one. There's different things, but then there's all the other stuff. Like, for example, we've introduced a thing called Fire Friday, which is, every other Friday in the middle of a sprint, the teams can kind of work on what they want. We've now got, quarterly hackathons going. We've got, I'd say we're a pretty flat structure. So, when we do like strategy stuff, or we've done vision workshops, the whole squad is involved. We're trying to kind of really make sure they've got their input and drive the direction Prezzee wants to go. We're very open that we want to be, a top tech company, and how do we get there? So we're looking at obviously doing things like this. We're getting out there and talking to people, encouraging people to go to meetups. We've hosted a couple of meetups at the Prezzee offices, and we're planning to carry on doing that. So there's a lot of different levels to this, but on the individual, it's like, engineers love to be challenged, and so we give opportunities. So we've got like I said, we're moving the monolith to microservices, but we've been very keen not to just bring outside people in and do all the work. So when we've been setting up projects, we've been bringing people from our squads and moving them into the transformation teams for upskilling and that type of thing. We've got engineers who've moved across. One of our amazing engineers who's more on the back end is now doing mobile engineering. So it's kind of, how do you give them opportunities for people? It's basically keeping people engaged, enjoying what they're doing. And the way I've always looked at, and recruitment, I'm probably a little bit more vocal about it now, is that, and I'll say this into interviews, I want engineers to leave better than when they arrive.
Yeah.
So it's how can we make sure that's it? So you've got to listen to people, and you've got to hear when, hopefully get a sense of when things are not going so well, and react if there's ways to kind of fix it. Yeah.
It sounds like a great place to work. It sounds like you've built a really interesting environment to be in. I love the idea of when you have big company decisions, or you're looking at something that affects the whole team, that you get the whole team involved. I don't think there are many businesses that do that, and it gives that sense of empowerment, and also showing them, what's the next step, where can you be in more of these conversations. And I think that's fantastic. It sounds like you're set up for the next couple months, whether it's the next 12 or 18, where you go into these global teams. I think there's been so much in this podcast that people can take from it, whether it's about your career, maybe someone listening's had a break and wants to get back into it, or wants to try something completely new and is feeling like there's a barrier to it, or if it's more on the growing the teams aspect. I think you've talked to some fantastic things in here, interviewing for the person as opposed to the skills, for one, I think is something that everybody can take away. For you, and this is my last question, what is the one thing, if the audience only took one, what would you like them to take away from this podcast?
I mean, we've talked about it a lot, and it is something, it's a big passion, and I think it is people. People generally are an organization's biggest expense, the biggest asset. Companies don't always value it that way, especially around, how recruitment is set up and the time given to do things like that. So I'd say, if you focus on your people, really focus, know what you want, and kind of find the right people and keep the right people, everything else does become a lot easier. It's kind of seems like it's simple, but it kind of is, you find them right people and they will drive your business.
Love it.
So I think,
Thank you so much, Vinny. It's been great having you. And maybe, you never know, maybe we'll do this again in 12, 18 months and talk about the next growth.
Yeah.